What if your phone spied on you, not just tracking your data, but taking a screenshot of your screen every 5 minutes and sending it to a government server? What if your government chose your haircut for you from a state-approved list of 15 styles and employed a dedicated fashion police to hunt down and punish violators? But this system was more than just a tool for ensuring loyalty. It was a radical, state-enforced act of historical revenge. Before the Kim regime, the Korean peninsula was dominated by the feudal caste system of the Joseon dynasty. The old elites, the landowners, the scholars, the merchants, sat at the top. When Kim Il-sung took power, he didn't just abolish this system, he inverted it. The descendants of the old, upper class, were now branded as the hostile class, their bloodlines permanently tainted. Meanwhile, the descendants of peasants and anti-Japanese fighters were elevated to the new core class, the beneficiaries of this new world order. By institutionalizing this inverted hierarchy, the regime locked families into a state-mandated destiny.
This is not a dystopian novel. This is the state-mandated reality for 25 million people. This is daily life in North Korea. From space, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is a hole in the world, a void of darkness surrounded by light. This image is more than a metaphor for its isolation. It's a clue to the central mystery of the nation itself. How does a regime maintain this level of absolute control in the 21st century? The answer isn't just in the guard towers or the barbed wire. To understand North Korea, you have to understand the invisible architecture that governs every life from birth to death. A system more powerful than any wall. It's a social caste system called Songbun. This system decides your job, your home, your food, and your fate. And for one young woman, it created a world where her friends were killed for watching a movie. In October 2023, a young woman named Giri Kang escaped North Korea on a small wooden fishing boat with her mother and aunt. Her journey to freedom was remarkable, but the story she told the United Nations was chilling. As a child, her family was banished from the city. Their crime? Her grandmother's religious beliefs. In this isolated existence, Giri was lucky. She gained access to a smuggled USB stick containing South Korean television dramas. To her, the shows were a revelation. She described them as so refreshing and more credible than North Korea's state propaganda. For the first time, she saw a world of freedom, fashion, and expression that the regime had told her did not exist. But this small act of curiosity, of watching a simple TV show, carried an unimaginable price. As she told the world from the floor of the UN General Assembly, 3 of my friends were executed, 2 of them in public for distributing South Korean dramas. One of them was only 19 years old.
This story isn't just about punishment. It reveals the regime's deepest fear. It fears a K-drama as much as it fears a weapon. It fears a USB stick as much as an invading army. Why? Because for 75 years, the Kim dynasty has survived by trapping its people inside 3 interlocking prisons. A social prison that predetermines your life, a digital prison that watches your every move, and a physical prison for anyone who dares to dissent. To understand daily life in North Korea, we must first deconstruct this architecture of control. The architecture of control. The social prison, your life, decided at birth. The foundation of North Korean society is Songbun. Established in the late 1950s, it is a social classification system that assigns every citizen a status at birth based on the perceived political loyalty of their ancestors. This status, passed down through the paternal line, is almost impossible to change. The population is divided into three main castes. At the top is the core class, about 25% of the population, who are considered the most loyal. In the middle is the wavering class, the uncertain majority. And at the bottom is the hostile class, the perceived enemies of the state, including descendants of landowners, merchants, religious figures, or those with relatives in South Korea. Your songbun dictates everything. It determines if you are allowed to live in the privileged capital, Pyongyang. It determines whether you can attend a top university, what job the state will assign you, how much food you receive from the public distribution system, and even who you can marry. Merit and ability are secondary to the purity of your bloodline. This systemic discrimination creates a lifetime of injustice. One defector born to a family of Korean-Japanese returnees had excellent grades and dreamed of attending a top university. He was rejected from every single one. He was then barred from military service, a key path to social advancement. His family background had tainted him. In his own words, I was being held back due to my songbun classification. The hopelessness and injustice I felt drove me. I came to the conclusion that there was no hope. He sensed Liston despied, with ensuring the unwavering loyalty of those who owed their entire existence to the system. This rigid social blueprint is now reinforced by a new, more modern prison, one that every citizen is forced to carry in their pocket. The digital prison, the all-seeing state. To the outside world, North Korea seems technologically frozen in time. But inside the country, the regime has embraced technology as its most powerful new tool of surveillance. A recent analysis of a smartphone smuggled out of the country reveals the terrifying extent of this digital control. These phones, which look like any other Android device, run a custom-built, state-controlled operating system. This software is designed for total surveillance. At random intervals, approximately every 5 minutes, the phone automatically takes a screenshot of whatever is on a display. These images are stored in a hidden folder, inaccessible to the user, but available for inspection by state security agents at any time. The censorship is built directly into the keyboard. Typing the word South Korea causes them to be automatically replaced with the regime's official term, puppet state. Typing the common South Korean term of endearment, Oppa, corrects it to comrade and issues a warning. This word can only be used to describe your siblings. Accessing the global internet is impossible for ordinary citizens. Instead, they're confined to a sealed, domestic-only intranet called Kwangmong, or Bright Star. This walled garden contains only state-approved websites, propaganda, and monitored email services. For most North Koreans, this tiny censored network is the internet. Yet in its quest for perfect digital control, the regime created an unforeseen vulnerability. It put a powerful computer in the hands of millions of people, and a small but growing number of tech-savvy citizens are learning to fight back. Defectors report that groups of friends now help each other jailbreak or root their state-issued phones. Their primary motivation is not just to watch a forbidden movie, but to reclaim a sliver of privacy. The jailbreaking process allows them to access the phone's hidden files, and most importantly, delete the surveillance logs in the folder of incriminating screenshots. The very tool of oppression, designed to instill a sense of constant observation, has become the target of a burgeoning digital resistance. The regime, in building its perfect digital prison, inadvertently supplied the prisoners with the tools to pick the locks. But what happens when these invisible prisons, the social and the digital, aren't enough? The regime has a final, brutal answer: the physical prison. The physical prison, the barbed wire, and the camps. In 1981, a woman was imprisoned in the infamous political prison camp, number 14. She was pregnant. Her son, Shin Dong-yup, was born inside the camp and grew up knowing nothing but its horrors. His family was there because of the regime's policy of guilt by association, a law that punishes up to 3 generations for the political crimes of a single relative. The state believed Shin's blood was impure because his uncle had fled to South Korea. Life in the camps is a carefully engineered hell. The United Nations and human rights groups estimate that between 80,000 and 120,000 people are currently held in a network of these camps across the country. Prisoners are forced into 16 to 18 hours of hard labor a day in mines, farms, and factories. Rations are so meager that up to 40% of inmates die from starvation. To survive, they eat rats, snakes, and grass. The camps are designed to strip away all humanity. When Shin was 13, he overheard his mother and brother planning an escape, conditioned by the camp's rules where failing to report an escape plan is also punishable by death, and desperate for a reward of extra food, he informed the guard. 7 months later, he was forced to stand at the front of a crowd and watch as his mother was hanged and his brother was shot by a firing squad. These camps are not just instruments of political terror. They are a critical component of the North Korean economy. The government prioritizes weapons development above all else, diverting a vast portion of the nation's resources to its military programs. This creates a massive labor and resource gap. The political prison camps are designed to fill it. The inmates serve as a disposable, unpaid labor force. They're working the mines and logging sites, directly subsidizing the state's military-first ambitions. The camps are not a flaw in the system. They are a fundamental feature of the regime's economic model.
To ensure these three prisons, social, digital, and physical, remain effective, the regime must control one last thing: your mind, the mental prison, the religion of the Kims.
From the moment a North Korean is born, they are immersed in a universe of relentless propaganda. The state has constructed an elaborate personality cult that elevates the Kim family to the status of deities. Portraits of the first two leaders, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, are mandatory in every home, office. Children are taught absurd myths as historical fact, that Kim Jong-il's birth was heralded by a double rainbow, or that Kim Jong-un learned to shoot a gun at age 3 and drive at age 8. All media, newspapers, television, radio, is state-controlled and serves a single purpose: to praise the mocking supreme leader and portray the outside world as a corrupt, suffering hellscape from which only the Kims can protect them. This goes far beyond a typical political cult. It is a state-mandated religion. North Korea is officially an atheist country, and practicing an independent faith, particularly Christianity, is a grave crime, punishable by torture, imprisonment, or death. The regime has systematically dismantled traditional belief systems and replaced them with the worship of the Kim dynasty. The leaders are not just political figures. They are presented as divine beings. Disobeying them is not merely a political crime, it is blasphemy. This theological control is the mortar that holds the other prisons together, demanding absolute, unquestioning faith. For decades, these prisons, social, digital, physical, and mental, seemed impenetrable. But in the 1990s, the system failed. A catastrophic famine swept the nation, and the state, for the first time, could no longer feed its people. And out of the ashes of that devastation, the first cracks in the wall began to appear. The cracks in the wall. The market revolution. The rise of the Jangmadang. When the state's public distribution system collapsed during the famine of the 1990s, North Koreans faced a stark choice: starve or find their own way to survive. They chose survival. Across the country, informal markets known as Jangmadang began to spring up. Initially, these were small, illegal gatherings where people bartered for food. Today, they have evolved into a sophisticated network of over 400 officially sanctioned markets that form the backbone of the North Korean economy. It is estimated that up to three-quarters of the population now depend on these markets for their income. Because most men are tied to their official, non-functioning state jobs, these markets are run overwhelmingly by women, who have become the primary breadwinners for their families. This economic revolution gave birth to a new generation, the Jongmadang generation. These are young North Koreans who grew up with capitalism, not communism. They have little or no memory of depending on the state for food or security. Their loyalty is not to the regime's ideology, but to the power of the market. The rise of the markets created a fundamental contradiction that is now tearing at the fabric of North Korean society. The regime's power was built on the ideological hierarchy of Songbun, but the Jangma suddenly, a trader from the lowest hostile class, could become far wealthier and more influential in their community than a core class party official living on a worthless state salary. The regime, powerless to crush a system that everyone, including its own officials, now relied on, was forced to adapt. It began taxing the markets and accepting bribes from merchants, making state officials economically dependent on the very capitalist system that undermines their ideological authority. This collision of two class systems is actively dissolving the power of Songbun from within. But these markets didn't just trade food and goods. They became the pipeline for the regime's greatest fear, forbidden information. The USB uprising. Information as a weapon. The Jangma-dong became the primary distribution network for foreign media smuggled across the Chinese border. In the early days, it was DVDs, which required people to own old Chinese players, that the government would try to catch by cutting the power, trapping the disc inside. But technology evolved. The USB stick changed everything. Small, cheap, and easy to hide, it became the vessel for a quiet revolution. The statistics are staggering. One study found that 81% of North Korean defectors had access to USBs, and of those, 98% contained illegal media that contradicted the government's narrative. For many, like Guri Kang, this was their first glimpse of the outside world. Another defector, Ju Yang, said that South Korean dramas helped her see through the propaganda, revealing a world whose existence she couldn't have imagined. The state's carefully constructed reality began to shatter like glass. This act of consuming illegal media had a profound, unintended consequence. The regime's control has always relied on destroying trust, using the Songbun system and a vast network of informants to turn neighbors, friends, and even family members against each other. People lived in constant fear, unable to speak freely. But the shared risk of watching a forbidden film creates a new, powerful kind of bond. As one defector explained, because your friend is watching these foreign movies with you, you know that you can trust him. In secret viewing parties, huddled in darkened rooms, North Koreans are not just discovering the outside world, they are rediscovering trust in each other. These small circles of shared defiance, born from a USB stick, are the seeds of a new civil society, one that exists entirely outside of and in opposition to the state. This quiet rebellion of markets and K-dramas is now evolving as a new generation takes the fight to the digital realm. The digital resistance, hacking the system. The Jangmadang generation is not just consuming foreign media, they are actively hacking the state's tools of control. As previously mentioned, they jailbreak their phones to delete surveillance files. But the resistance goes further. An illicit trade in Chinese mobile phones and foreign SIM cards thrives along the border. By hiking into remote mountainous areas, North Koreans can connect to Chinese cell networks, allowing them to make international calls and, for a brief risky moment, touch the global internet. Even more surprising is the use of sophisticated obfuscation tools. Recent analysis of North Korean internet traffic reveals that a select group of users inside the country are using commercial VPN services like ExpressVPN, Hotspot Shield, and Astral VPN to hide their location and bypass censorship. While this access is likely limited to the elite and state-sponsored actors, it demonstrates a high level of technical knowledge and a desire for unfiltered access that exists even within the system. It shows that the digital wall, once thought to be absolute, is porous. The difference is stark. On one side, a device of total control. On the other, a tool of potential liberation. A social system cracking under the weight of money. An information blockade being pierced by USB sticks and VPNs. These forces are converging, pointing toward an unwritten future. The unwritten future. The story of daily life in North Korea is a story of immense suffering and breathtaking control. But it is also a story of incredible resilience. The regime built what it believed to be the perfect prison, founded on the pillars of a rigid caste system, total information control, and enforced distrust. But those pillars are cracking. The Jong-un created a new form of economic independence, making the ideological promises of the state irrelevant. Foreign media, smuggled in on millions of tiny devices, created ideological dissent, shattering the state's monopoly on the truth, and shared illegal activities, from trading in the market to watching a movie with a friend, are rebuilding the bonds of trust that the regime worked for decades to destroy. This is the silent revolution. It is not a revolution of guns and protests, but one of markets, information, and a generation that refuses to live in the dark. It is a slow, generational, but perhaps irreversible shift. The story of North Korea is a profound lesson on the fragility of tyranny in the face of human spirit. It teaches us the true value of freedom, the freedom to choose your work, to speak your mind, to learn about the world, and to connect with others without fear. And